Hello, everyone. Welcome. Gabs here. What's in the Glass Digital Beer Stream. Tuesday, 23rd February. This means that we are right now into our fourth week of live streams. So welcome, everyone. If we haven't met yet before, my name is Gabs. I'm trying to be the best beer communicator I can. I'm within this beautiful industry from around 10 years, I would say. So 10 years of many beers, many chats, many shifts behind the bar, many shifts in bottle shops, many shifts in breweries. And this means that my passion is still there because I still love to communicate with people and, having a great time discussing about the topic that I like the most. So we started a year ago with What's in a Glass, which is a digital community. We are focused on creating a platform where to share stories about the people that are inside the industry and working within the industry and other people that are just like part of the industry anyway. And we started with the digital beer streams back in May. We did 48 different live streams at that time, and it was brilliant. We talked with many different people from the industry, from bartenders to journalists to book writers, all sorts, and has been really, really rewarding. I took a little step, like a back step, because I really wanted to concentrate on all the parts of what we could do. So we started to produce a show which is called Turning the Tide. You're going to see it. It's about London pubs and the transformation of the London drinking culture. And then we decided to come back to the digital beer streams because we think there is so much to say in these days, and there are also so many people that we want to meet and we want to chat with. So we try to have an interesting balance between people that represent or are working in pubs and people that represent or working in breweries. And if we can, we also try to get a chance to speak with people that are really making the difference in these days within the industry. There are so many ways to make the difference in the industry. One is definitely to try to support your local businesses, try to support your local pubs, try to support your local breweries, and try to, and understand what may need, how we can help them, and all sorts of things. So it's always a pleasure to welcome every guest, especially when they are guests that are really making a difference for the brewing industry. So when I had the chance to be able to speak with Sophie de Ronde, and tell me, Sophie, later if I say that your surname right, she's definitely someone that are making an impact right now for the industry, and not just from community point of view, but also from a beer point of view, because Mill, the brewery she's part of and she's the head brewer of, is making incredible beers. So while I'm drinking an IPA from New Zealand, which has been sent from the New Zealand Beer Collective a couple of weeks ago, and I'm saying thanks a lot to AD for it. It's a AZ IPA, because I want to stay on the IPAs for obvious reasons. We would love also to welcome Sophie. So, hello, Sophie.
Hello.
How you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. We already have a comment from a good friend of ours. Oh, man. Welcome to the Digital Beer Streams. Thanks a lot to accept my invite.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Lovely. How's been your day so far?
Oh, all right. Bit of canning, bit of office work, bit of admin, and enjoying some sunshine, actually.
Yep, we can say that finally. Yes.
Yes. Spring is around the corner.
Absolutely. May I ask you what beer you were canning today, if you remember?
It was if anyone knows some of our beer series, it's a Gardens of Green, and it was a dipper of the latest Gardens of Green. So it was a dipper volume 2. So yes, we've had a mega load of hops that went into it. Oh God, I'm trying to think back now. I think the first one might have been Enigma, Muteri, then we had a Sabro Idaho, then we had a Strata Citra, and I think a Galaxy and something else in there as well. So yeah, fully loaded, and it's smelling absolutely spot on.
Wow, I love the fact that you mentioned hops, which are the classics, the one that people are trying to associate to IPAs and beers that are really hoppy from maybe like a longer time, and hops they're really like pushing hard in these days. I don't want to say trend, but they're going quite a lot. Like you mentioned, some of them.
Yeah, you've got a huge amount of on-trend hops. Like Strata is possibly one of the next biggest ones, sort of hitting the brewing scene. And I mean, it smells absolutely amazing. It's really, really nice. But having been brewing for 13, 14 years, I've got to just love the classics. I absolutely love Centennial, a little bit Cascade, and yeah, really, really good.
Absolutely, and this is the beauty of our industry right now. You can jump from old-fashioned type of produced IPAs, and then something which is absolutely contemporary, and the first time that I had a sniff to a beer and had some Sabrin in, I was just like, what's going on in here? I didn't expect that. And so great time to be a brewer, and great time to be a brewer of hoppy beers for sure.
Yeah, Sabro has been a really, really interesting hop. Because a lot of people it's a Marmite hop. People either really love it or they just don't get on with it at all. Yeah. And actually, I think, and I found that particularly with this Gardens Dipper, it works so well as just a little bit of a seasoning hop, and just to sort of kind of bring other flavours and just add that slight hint of almost coconutty caramel sweetness to a beer.
I had to be honest with you. Most of the on-trend hops that I tried were coming from sour beers that I had to, I had to try, and that's unusual, because I think the best showcasing type of beer to really enjoy hoppy flavors is always a IPA. So I recommend probably everyone to maybe give it a go to brand new hops on hoppy ales rather than sour. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think sour beers and hops. I probably haven't been drinking beer that much during the period that hoppy sours were around. So I was drinking sort of classic sours and then just your IPAs. And so I think it does work to an extent, but I think definitely to get the true flavour of a hop, you've got to showcase it in a pale ale or an IPA, definitely.
100%. And I think there is an interesting conversation that I was reading a couple of weeks ago in Good Beer Hunting about this debate of easy sour fermented and a bit more complex sour fermented beers. And especially in America, there was this stigma about the beers that potentially were quickly fermented being not as noble as probably the other type of beers. And I don't know if you have any opinion about that, but it was an interesting conversation.
I think they held up on their own as individual styles. You can definitely tell a quick soured beer to a sort of long, prolonged traditional soured beer. There's going to be far more complexity in the aged soured beers, just because you've got so many more bugs and bacteria and stuff going on and creating those different characteristics. Whereas the kettle souring, because you're just using your one strain of your lactobacillus, the beer can almost seem a little bit one-dimensional with the tartness and the sourness.
Right.
And have a play around with the flavours depending on the temperature that you do your kettle souring. But you've always got that underlying sort of lactobacillus. It's a plantarum strain. You've always got that underlying kind of characteristic and flavour in the quick kettle sour beers.
Wow, I love to talk with people that have incredible experience in brewing, because it really gives me the full picture of what's happening behind the scenes, and sometimes also like what it takes to build a beer from scratch based on probably what would you want to drink and what would you like to drink. Is that how it works for you, Sophie? Like, you brew, what would you like to drink? I'm sure.
Yeah, if I brewed what I wanted to drink, it would just be saisons, saisons and IPAs or pale ales, with the odd stout in there.
Nice.
But actually, realistically, it is a business, and particularly during the last year, we've had to brew the things that sell quickly.
Yeah.
And that is the IPAs, and we're doing more and more double IPAs, and we're just going to start getting a few tippers in there as well.
Interesting. Well, let me put it in this way. I normally do this a bit earlier than this, but we started very well and very powerful. So sorry if maybe the questions came after the 10 minutes, but if there is someone that unfortunately haven't had the pleasure yet to meet you or to meet the brewery you are the head brewer of, would you mind to give a bit of introduction about yourself and the brewery?
Yes, of course. So yes, I'm Sophie de Ronde. I have been brewing for the last sort of 13, 14 years. I've been with Burnt Mill now. It'll be 4 years in May. So I came on just as the brew kit was being installed, and we managed to get our first beer through the brew kit in end of May, and that was Pintle. So those of you that know our beers out there, Pintle was our first ever brew, and it's our core staple, and we generally always try and have it in stock for people. We haven't had to tweak the recipe much at all since the very beginning of it. The only thing that we have done is added an extra hop to enhance those kind of nice orangey type of characteristics that have already come from the Cascade and Citra.
What a beer.
Yeah, it's I've not had the pleasure of drinking it, but it always smells really, really good, and we always just try and aim to keep it as consistent and as on target as possible, and hopefully we do manage that. And the name of Pintle is actually the spoke that goes inside like grinding stones or a turning wheel or something. So that spoke called a Pintle kind of represents the beer in itself and the brewery and how it's kind of spiraled and developed quite naturally from that one beer.
What a name! I like that, and it's a shame that I didn't know at that time when I was working in some bottle shops, because when people were coming to see what to buy, I always wanted to share as many stories behind the beers that I knew and what I loved the most, to trying to making sure it was a great seller. But probably we didn't need that because we were selling every can probably the same day it was arriving. The place was Clapton Craft in Finsbury Park, if anyone is familiar. Martin was a great advocate for the early Burnt Mill beers, and it was a great fun to taste all of them with him. I remember long shift and finishing shift in a very good way. So I was reading about your brewing career and your brewing experience, and I found some interesting facts, and one probably is not very, it hasn't been probably an incredible beautiful experience for you, because tell me if I'm wrong, I was reading that you realized that in your previous job before Burnt Mill, you realized that you couldn't drink beers that were made with gluten, and you developed like an intolerance to gluten. And can I ask you something more about that, because I'm not sure about it, and you better talk for that.
So yes, I was working at Muntons Maltings. I was the brewing or managed a pilot plant there in the product development sector, and I had 2 years there, and I got to the point that I was just feeling more and more ill, and to the point that, you know, I couldn't walk up a flight of stairs without being absolutely exhausted and out of breath, and I just wasn't feeling well at all. I would just want to come home and climb into bed and just curl up and fall asleep. So I had to do a dietary elimination process to find out what was actually making me ill. And it ironically turned out to be barley and wheat. And for a while I thought beer was okay. And it was just the food side of things because I felt better after just cutting out the foods for a while. And then still drinking beer, after a little while I was then still getting the same reactions and illnesses. So I spent a month off beer, and then I had even just a gluten-free or gluten-removed one. And as soon as I drank it, I just went so flush in the face and my throat started itching, and I was just like, oh my God, oh, this is horrendous. And it really, really did question my career. I knew I had to move away from Muntons because of that. But also I did miss the commercial side of brewing. My heart is in production brewing and in sort of small craft companies. And kind of, I suppose, came along at the right time. We met Charles, and I'd done a pilot brew for him, which was Pintle, actually, at Muntons. And we just got chatting and went from there, really. And timing just seemed to work quite well. And he took me on with a proviso, or with knowing that I can't drink beer, but I've got a pretty well-trained nose. So we spent the first few months learning each other's languages. So for certain off flavors or undesirable flavors in the sort of conditioning beer that Charles was picking up, I was picking up the same thing, but he was using different language for it. So he was my taste and sort of language person. And I could obviously pick up certain things on smell. So now all my job is just to see if there are any undesirable flavors in a beer that's ready to be packed. And we've developed a really, really great team. We've got a couple of brewers on the floor that are doing the brewing and most of the packaging. Actually all the packaging. I'd sort of help as and when I'm needed and just keep everything going behind the scenes. And sort of get my nose in there and make sure that all the beers are sort of on point before we sort of crash chill them to package and all that kind of stuff.
Definitely. And I remember to every customer or every, a person who was coming in the places when I worked and they were looking for, gluten-free available options, without compromise the flavor profile of the aroma profile, and I could give them an interesting selection of products at that time. And one that I was trying to always promote as much as I could were the burn meal beers. And I even didn't know then the reason, because you were making them, it was almost for a personal experience that you had with that matter personally. So you'll be happy to hear then it's not just me then love your gluten-free range, but there is Graham then actually asking if you're gonna make any more.
Yeah, so obviously because of my unfortunate allergies, we have made a beer called Steel Cut, which is oat based. Have a little bit of buckwheat in there and some maize, and we have, I suppose, brewed it semi regularly. because it's quite a difficult beer to brew. It is quite challenging. We did have a go just before Christmas, and unfortunately it completely clogged up in the mash tun, and we just had to dump the mash. It was really, really sad. But it's back in the schedule again for the spring, and we're going to give it another bash and sort of try and revert back to some of the things that we were doing first time round with the beer, as opposed to trying to get the higher yields and extracts from it, because I mean, it is quite an expensive beer to produce. Not only the ingredients are slightly more expensive than your standard barley, but the yielding of it is about 20-30% lower than a standard beer. So, so if, I have heard reports of people like, oh, God, that's expensive for like a 4.2 or 4.2 is it percent beer, but what they don't actually realize is the effort and the work, and it is more expensive to produce.
100%.
It's smashing beer, absolutely smashing.
Oh yeah, totally, absolutely. And as Natasha just said, the fact that you are capable to make some great beers, and not counting on the sensory checks of taste and mouthfeel is absolutely brilliant. And I would love to also mention to everyone that is watching us right now that you also won an award with the Guild of British Beer Writers for your skills in brewing and for probably your contribute on the matter, and that was brilliant, right?
Yeah, that was really, really proud moment. And I was on the shortlist the year before, and it went very, very deservedly between Jager and John. And and then obviously, when was it? 2018.
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah. Time flies by. Ended up being my year, and really, really honouring, actually. And it's great to receive.
If people was checking just below what's happening in the writing, it doesn't just say the Birmingham Brewery, but also about the International Women's Collaboration Brew Day. And I know it's your create, it's your baby, and I know it's something that you create, and it will be lovely to hear more about that, because I'm sure few people will be interested to hear that as well.
Yeah, certainly. So it's actually it's a passion, and it's sparked from something called Project Venus, which Sarah Barton of Brewster's Brewery set up going back, oh God, I think maybe about 12 years ago. And that was basically female brewers in the industry coming together, collaborating on beers. And the idea was to sort of raise awareness and highlight women that are in the industry and that are brewing.
Yeah.
And from those brew days, and like anyone who does collaborations knows, no matter what industry you're in, collaborations, you learn so much from them, and you get insight from other people's knowledge, and you have absolutely a well of time doing it, because you're sharing a similar passion, and you just have a laugh and just create a friendship and that network.
Yeah.
It's and so from
like a gathering.
Yeah. And so from this, I was just like, well, how can we take this worldwide? It'd be absolutely amazing if we can spread this and kind of share the passion throughout the world as much as possible. And the time that the idea came about, I think it was in the autumn, and it was just a bit too short time period to try and sort something out for that International Women's Day. Just seemed logical to hold it on International Women's Day. And so I sort of went away and thought over the idea, and over that next year, I got in touch with several people within the industry, and linked up with a lady called Denise Ratfield, who at the time was managing the social media for Pink Boot Society. And we just absolutely clicked and completely shared that vision and that dream. And so we sort of ploughed on ahead and managed to get the inaugural event up and running. And we had an overwhelming response of people wanting to get involved. And it was absolutely fabulous. And it's so humbling and such a wonderful feeling. And we just wanted to keep it going and carry on. And we very much wanted it to sort of remain a completely independent, autonomous event. So there are no ties to anything. There are no ties to charities, no ties to ingredients. And people just had the freedom to do what they could do within their business. I know that there are some brewers that wanted to support sort of local women's charities, as well as other potential charities. And so the ideas for all the different years' themes and stuff just kind of naturally came about depending on what happened the previous year and what people were almost kind of asking for.
Yeah.
So this year is the 8th year. And given what's happened in the world over the last year, we've come up with the theme of Unite Compassion. So every year it's a Unite Brew. So last year it was Unite Tribute. So so then it was Unite Expression, Unite Forage, all various different things. But yeah, this year it's overwhelmed me again, as it always does, considering sort of the lockdown situation and the isolation and not being able to sort of travel. I know it's the same in a lot of other countries. Some countries are more open than us, and they're able to have some people in the brewery and brewing with them. But the amount of people that are still getting involved despite the whole pandemic is still absolutely brilliant. We've got 2 weeks to go. We've got well over 50 pins on the map across brewers, home brewers, brew supplies, hop suppliers, malt suppliers, fringe events, bottle shops, and anything that is in aim of supporting the event and the day and raising awareness of women in the industry and the diversity that we have in the industry. We'll get it up on the map and shout to the world about it. And the idea of compassion is that we wanted to show the world that the industry just has the compassion and the passion within it, almost to just give the world a big hug. With all the pandemic, and then you've had a lot of political turmoil as well across so many different countries. I think the world just needs a big old hug.
Yeah, there is a need of love, and also we're lucky in a way that the fast digital revolution we are part of, that maybe after everything is going to reopen again, it will decline a bit, and probably for the sake of meeting each other again in the outdoor and maybe in the indoor as well. But I love the fact that so many different initiatives and so many creative people and people that have just good thoughts managed to not just really making things, but scream about it and making aware large amount of people everywhere in the world. And I'm so glad to see that there are good things happening in here as well, and well done.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been really humbling.
Beautiful. And there are so many beautiful breweries that have head brewers and breweries and just people then working in there, which are girls then probably just approach the world of brewing and the world of beer not far ago. So it's always great to see that they can count on people like you as an inspiration. As few people told me about how they feel when they have conversations with you, which is brilliant.
Oh, that's lovely.
I'm telling you, this is what happened very often. Like to hear them, maybe especially in a world where the representation is not equal yet. Having great people then really showing the right way to go is always the best thing. So I'm looking forward to see more about this year as well. And this is something that I'm usually spend a bit longer, but today I really didn't want because you have so many great things to say. But generally speaking, if we will give a bit of insight about what happened, what is happening now, and what will happen in our industry in the short term, without going too much in details, but wherever you think is worth to mention. Are we nearly there to have our industry back?
Oh, you know what? Actually, it doesn't feel like it. I know that doesn't sound very positive, but at the moment, it just feels like it's so far away still. I know in the UK, Boris Johnson had his speech last night and giving us the plan going forward. And yeah, hopefully by the summer we'll all be out and drinking and pubs will be open and everything will be wonderful. And I really keep my fingers crossed that it is, because it's tough. It has been really tough. Yeah. Fortunately, as a small business, as with many other brewers, we are small businesses with small numbers of employees, that it's meant that change and adaptability within the company has been a lot easier to implement than it could have been potentially in some of the larger companies. So we're very lucky that we had a canning line that came in January last year. And so we've been able to just switch everything from probably 70% keg all into can. And although we're having to do slightly reduced volumes, we're still brewing, we're still selling, we're still producing hopefully the best quality top beer that we can. And fortunately, we've had revenues from export, and we've had Marks and Spencer's contract for a High Hopes, which has been really, really good for us, and has kind of sort of kept us going with guaranteed income throughout the whole pandemic. Yeah, and we just keep going and do what we can. And I know that sales are crazy, trying to find new sources of or new routes of sales to different places and different companies. But it's a really tough market. And you know what? It was a tough market beforehand as well. It is pretty overcrowded. I know that brewers seem to still be doing well and still coping, but they kind of get to a certain level and they tend to plateau a little bit, which is very natural, actually. I think any brewery and any company will have that plateau point. And we were on the growth side of that, and we had aims and plans to increase our capacity by X amount over this year and over next year. But unfortunately, for the time being, all of that's having to be halted. And once things are back to normal and we've got sort of full sales going at full volumes again, then we should be looking at sort of those growth plans again. But yeah, it's stunted us a little bit.
Yeah, well, you also gave some good, suggestions for all the businesses, all the breweries that potentially wanted to hear what is the right way to go. And you just say it's just like working hard, making sure you have the best beer you can produce, and working with the right people out there, and just have faith, probably something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, fortunately, we're pretty much a country of alcoholics, so who love beer.
Yeah, well, but this is an interesting one, because I had the pleasure to speak with Mr. John Keeling recently, and he gave me, it was for the Turning the Tide, the show that we're producing, and he gave me, for the first time, not at 10 years, not at 20 years, but almost like a 40 years timeline of the brewing history of this country. And it was very interesting to hear the fact that developing different drinking habits, like drinking at home, is not a new thing. He said the 80% of the beers that Fuller's at that time was producing were going into the Fuller's pubs. Near to the end of his career for Fuller's, it was completely the opposite. 80% was going in probably off trade, and necessarily not even in the UK, but even outside, which is a completely different, situation from what it used to be. So, what do you think? Like, people drinking at home, is it a thing? Is it going to stay? Is it going to move away once pub are reopening slowly? How do you see that?
I think it will always be. I think there'll always be more drinking at home now. It's something that we were starting to see even before the pandemic, and that more people were choosing to drink at home as opposed to the pub.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that's. I don't know if it's society, environmental, the generation of people that are drinking and then end up having families and can't go to the pub anymore, and so they then have to stay at home and drink instead. Or for certainly like myself, I live in Suffolk, and yes, we've got a few pubs around us, but the selection that they have available isn't particularly what I would choose to drink. And so I would rather probably have something that I really want to drink and enjoy at home, that I've ordered from a company that I really want to use and support. Yeah. So quite often I still go to the pub, but you just not drinking for the sake of drinking, but because being in the pub is that social thing, and it's that unwinding, it's that joy, and it's that relaxation. And yes, actually most pubs have the drinks that you can drink and not think about, and that's actually what you want from a pub. But a lot of the time I don't think it would be that difficult to have a pub to have a small selection of cans in stock these days, because there are so many breweries and so many wholesalers offering cans from different breweries that it shouldn't be an issue to get hold of things like that. So yeah, have your everyday drinking beers that you don't want to think about on tap, and then just have your slightly more specialist stuff in the fridges on the back of the bar. Wow, in my eyes, it's not very hard.
It's really not. There are good pubs which are probably even like micro pubs or pubs in the countryside, which I saw, if they really want, they always have a stash for, Imperial Stout, or even like all ale. Sometimes I found, I remember Rye, in the city of Rye, in the town of Rye, there is a small, micro pub in there, and I remember I thought, like, I can't even find this in Hackney, but then you really care about the differentiate you offer. So yes, it's possible. It's a brilliant tip.
No, and I think certain pubs would draw in more clientele, just having a slightly wider range of beers in can, and potentially keep them for longer.
Yeah. Well, let me put it this way. We cover an amount of information and topics which is brilliant. I aim to have every night as brilliant a conversation as the one that we had tonight. And I found someone that knows what to do, then made, jumping out from path, then we're looking in a way to reinvent it herself and going to another challenge. So I do have a lot of respect for your career and what you did, and also your projects, which are going to be very remarkable for this industry.
Thank you.
And thank you again for being with me tonight. I'm always trying to stay between 40 minutes, and we had a lot of people watching us, putting likes, comments, and so you can see that there is love out there. We just need to go and collect it as soon as we can.
Yeah.
And Sophie, thanks again. I hope you're going to have a beautiful rest of the evening, and I can't wait to maybe come up in the brewery and see what's happening and get to meet you, very soon.
When travel allows, you are more than welcome at any time.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone as well. Please be safe. If you want to check the Turning the Tide campaign, there is a crowdfunding campaign running. You can find all information in the social media channels. And most important, have good food, have good beers, look after yourself, be happy. And yeah, all of this. Have a good one.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Bye-bye.